Hello, everyone. This is recording number 6 for a class on early Greek philosophy. We turn to Heraclitus, and I want to offer my summary of some basic views of his on the cosmos. So, there are 3 components: earth, sea, and fire that continuously change into each other in ways that are directed and measured by fire, to the effect that, quote, all is one. Now, we're going to unpack that proposal, but I want to first say that I call it my summary because I depart in a couple of ways from what you may find in introductory literature. And I'm going to flag these departures as we go along. So, the first thing that I said was that there are these 3 components: earth, sea, fire, that change into each other in ways that are directed by fire. Now, when you turn to the literature, you may find the claim that there are, quote, 4, quote, elements. Now, what is going on? That seems to be quite a big difference. First, on the count. Why do I say 3 while others say 4? There is reference to a fourth kind of thing, ether, sometimes called air in the literature. And, if you think that there are 4 elements, then you may go to this traditional list of elements, which is earth, water, fire, air. And then it can look to you like, there's reference to ether, that's going to be air, so we have 4 elements. But I think that in the text, ether is introduced as a kind of version of fire, so a version of one of the 3 components. It is a kind of especially shiny, bright, rarefied fire. So that's the first thing. Now, about this question of whether we should talk of elements. Elements is a technical term in later Greek philosophy. And I would just suggest that before you use a term that is technical, it really is important to ask yourself, what does that term amount to? Why do people who use it use it? And some other interpreters talk instead of stuff or matter. And again, matter is a technical philosophical term. And we should ask, what is matter? Or at least, what's going on when people talk about matter? And then you might think, well, maybe that is just asking too much. Maybe interpreters are looking for ways of rephrasing Heraclitus' claims in ways that are somewhat more accessible. After all, it is Heraclitus' epithet that he is obscure. So what we find in the evidence is not particularly accessible. And then maybe it is forgivable if interpreters just try to use words that are a little more familiar. But the word that I used, component, is also quite familiar. It just isn't a philosophical term. And here is a reason to refrain from talking about elements here. Typically, when Greek philosophers talk about elements, they are interested in the question of whether there are or what are the smallest particles, as it were, the smallest constituents of the natural world. And that doesn't seem to be Heraclitus' question. And that's philosophically important. And here's the philosophical reason to be cautious with talk about matter. Matter is typically associated with passivity. But we already saw that one of these components in Heraclitus, fire, is active, is kind of measuring things, directing things. So it isn't a good fit for us to kind of put it into the category of matter. So, for me, those are good reasons to stay with talk about 3 components. one of which has this as a subversion, ether. And now there is this additional claim that was also part of my summary, and that is that all is one. And that is often called monism. Monism is a term in philosophy that is used for positions according to which something is a unit or one. And in the literature, you may find the term material monism. But at this point, you're kind of already warned. We saw that matter isn't a good fit, so material monism is also not going to be a good fit. But how can we characterize the kind of monism that we see in Heraclitus? One option would be to say, well, isn't it somehow fire that does the measuring and the kind of exchanges between the different components? They are all up to fire. So maybe we should say this is some kind of fire monism. But I want to be cautious here, and I want to invite you to just sort of move more slowly. I was sort of precise in saying that what I offer in my summary is just a kind of first basic picture of how Heraclitus thinks about the cosmos. And now I want to kind of add to this and say it really is just the beginning. It is one layer, and there are other layers of complexity. So we can keep an open mind on how Heraclitus thinks of unity or how he thinks of the cosmos as one. And I want to invite you, for example, to look at passages about opposites and the unity of opposites and ask yourself how that adds to how we may think of Heraclitus's monism.